Okay, so I read that text to you for the first time, that newspaper article about ghosts, and now it's going to be your turn. So this time, as you read the text again, you are going to practice using the different reading skills of questioning, summarizing, clarifying, and visualizing. In other words, across the slides, there's going to be a series of activities and prompts that you're going to respond to. Now, the personal response icons popped up at the top of the screen, so this is about what you think, what you can identify, what you can find, and the highlighter's there to remind you that we're not looking at full answers, we're not looking at complete sentences, but there's an expectation that you are making a response in some way. We do appreciate that if you can't text mark onto screen, that you might need to just make notes in your books. But there will be quiz questions at the end to check your reading. And those quiz questions will also feed into other lessons in our retrieval skills. So it's really important that we're thinking actively about what we've just read. Okay, so at this time, we are going to go back into the text, but this time you're not just listening to me, you're going to be responding to it yourselves. Okay, so as you can see on this slide, we're going to just be practicing those skills of questioning and clarification. Now, questioning is what we might have called comprehension in the past. It's the most traditional way of being able to check in with what you've read. You find the answer to the question. So it's retrieval, it's looking at the text again to find the answer. So as I read through these questions, we're just going to then pause at the end, and you will be able to write down your answers if you're doing it into your books, or highlight it on your screen if you're doing it by text marking, or just if you've got somebody sat with you that's doing the work with you, you can just tell them the answer. Okay, so number one, questioning. Who is the Ghostbuster? So through this article, we've got constant references to our Ghostbuster, but who is he? What is his name? In the first paragraph, our Ghostbuster, okay, is explaining away one of the ghostly occurrences he was brought in to investigate. So what was the cause of the ghostly music? What was the cause of the ghostly music? And then as he develops it, his opinion on this page, he offers up some statistics. He gives us some percentages to help explain the ghostly occurrences he's often caused in to investigate. So what percentage of explanations have scientific, or as he calls it, non-occult explanations? So what percent of explanations have scientific reasonings, explanations? And what percentage is he still interested in? Okay, so we've got two numbers we're looking for in your answers there, two statistics. What percentage of explanations have scientific explanations, and what percentage is he interested in? Okay, so you can just pause there and record your answers. Now, it also says down here clarification. Now, if you remember, clarification means I don't understand something yet. Now, what I love about learning and the ability to learn at home is you can pause me, you can go across to an online dictionary, you can go and pick up another device and often find the answers much more quickly than we sometimes have the scope or the technology to enable you to do in class. So clarification. So there's this interesting word he uses in this third paragraph. He talks about the inexplicable 2% that intrigues him. So my question for you is, if I was reading this, I might say, well, I don't know what inexplicable means yet. So I'm going to give you a minute. We're just going to pause our screen at this point, and you're going to answer your questions, and you're going to find out what the word inexplicable means. Okay, off you go. Okay, lovely people. So quick answer time. So who is the Ghostbuster? And I hear you all say his name is Andrew Green. What was the cause of the ghostly music? Okay, he saw the mouse droppings, rodent marks. He was convinced it was the mice gnawing the felt pads that was causing the music. Nothing spooky in that at all. Now, what percentages of explanations did he say has that scientific explanation, that reasoning behind it? And your answer is, yes, you're right, 98%. So a huge number of these so-called ghost investigations come to a logical conclusion. He's almost talking himself out of a job. But he also says that there is a small percentage that he's still interested in. He talks about being intrigued by this percentage. And that answer is 2%. So everybody just check your answers, make sure that you were correct. If you weren't, if you found the wrong information, just quickly think to yourself, what went wrong? Was I in the wrong paragraph? Was I looking at the wrong information? Okay, now the next bit, inexplicable. So what does inexplicable mean? I did a quick Google search, the magic of my mobile phone, and inexplicable means unable to be explained or accounted for. So he's interested in this 2% that there is no explanation for. Inexplicable. Okay, we can argue that we are living in a strange time and it's inexplicable how this virus got started and how it's spreading. Okay, but it's creating opportunities for us to learn from home. Hi, on this page then, we're going to be thinking about those other two skills of reading, the skill of visualization and the skill of summary. Now, actually, these are two almost opposites because visualization is what my mind can picture, what my imagination can conjure and see. Now, often our ability to visualize is going to be linked to what's already in our visual memory. In other words, my ability to imagine is based on an awful lot of information I've got stored in my brain from thousands of films I've read, probably too many, or watched, thousands of books I've read, probably not enough. So I have this huge bank of information, of pictures stored already in my imagination. So for me, when I read, I often end up tapping into an image or an idea I've already encountered before, maybe in a film or in a book. Sometimes then, if we haven't watched or read a lot and our imaginations are naturally a bit smaller because we're younger, visualization can be the hardest thing for us to do. Hopefully the words used in this paragraph will help us. So in a minute, I'm going to read this paragraph to you again, and I want you to be thinking about what you can visualize. And at the end of this paragraph, I want you to complete the sentence for me. In this paragraph, I can imagine. Or in this paragraph, I can see. Okay, so as I read the paragraph to you, I want you to be thinking about what you can imagine and what you can see happening in this event that he describes. Okay, so the ghost hunter claims that on one startling occasion, he actually watched a bowl of oranges rise unaided off a sideboard, as if a clever magician had made his assistant float into the air. The bowl then shattered into pieces as it plummeted to the ground, and oranges bounced all around the room. So I'm just going to pause there. So at the end of that description, what can you see? So you can complete that sentence. I can see small oranges floating in the air. I can see bits of fruit flying around. I can see actually, if we just pause there, when he uses the image as if a clever magician, that's not actually what he's seeing. Is it? That little word as, he's reminding us that writers sometimes use similes or metaphors to help create a bridge between what they can see and what they want us to understand. So really, there isn't a magician that's turned up into this room and is causing the orange to float, but he's saying that the oranges were floating as if a magician had made his assistant float into the air. So he's using a simile there to help us in that process of visualization. Okay, so I just want you to write down and complete that stem. In this paragraph, I can imagine or I can see. Okay, he also gives us another example in another investigation. He and the family involved saw a heavy clock mysteriously transport from one end of the mantelpiece to the other. But he is convinced that such occurrences have nothing to do with the spirits of the dead. He believes they're caused by a type of energy we don't yet understand, which is generated by tense human emotions. Okay, so just that last one. What else can we see? What other story does he help us to imagine? Or what part of his story does he help us to imagine? So I can see something heavy floating from one end of something to another. So what can we see floating around? So we've got oranges, and now we can see A. So just pause there and complete your sentences. Okay, so the next skill is summary. Now, summary is always taking bigger units of writing, a whole paragraph, and reducing it down. So in this section, I want us to summarize these last two paragraphs on this page. And I want you to tell me when we pause, who's affected by poltergeist activity. So I want you to look at these paragraphs. And I want you to draw out for me a summary of who's being affected by poltergeist activity. I want you to think about, can you summarize what they are feeling? Why they are stressed and what happens next. So you might be saying, well, this looks a lot like questioning. So you're right, summarizing does begin with questioning. So some of these skills are going to overlap. But here we're using questions to draw out the key information, because the summary always draws out the key information and makes it a shorter answer. So I'm going to let you pause for a couple of minutes and you're going to write down the answers to who is affected by poltergeist activity, What are they feeling? Why are they stressed? And what happens next? Okay, so who's affected by poltergeist activity? Is it him or a family? Okay, it's a family. He's talking about families being affected by poltergeist activity. Okay, what are the family feeling? Okay, how is this family feeling? So it uses lots of words to give us clues that feelings drive these emotions in this activity. It talks about them, so I'll accept worried. Okay, I'll accept that they're feeling nervous. Our children are nervous about going to school. I'll accept that they're feeling tense and emotional. And I'll accept that they are feeling stressed. Okay, so I'll accept stressed, emotional, tense, worried for the family and what are they feeling. But what was causing those feelings of stress? Okay, so we've got a family that have moved, we've got a family whose situation have changed, and that's leading to them feeling stressed. The parents may be worried about changing jobs and shortage of money. So our guy is trying to explain the inexplicable event of an orange bowl floating and a clock floating due to an energy created by people's emotions. And that energy then creates an electrical energy that manifests itself. Okay, that creates things to move. So what happens next is all that energy gets turned into an emotional or an electronic magnetism, that pushes things around. So be careful how you're feeling at home at this time. Okay, so we're going to bring together now the skills of questioning and summarizing. And I just want you to, in a couple of sentences, write down the details of the case that he mentions here. Okay, so you're going to just reread these paragraphs and you're going to write down either in note form or sentences the case that he uses here to explain another kind of ghostly event. Okay, so remember with summarizing, you might be answering the question who was involved, what was happening, and where. Okay, off you go. Answer the question now. Okay, and in the final part of the article, just to check us back in on what we've read, we're going to combine question and summarising again. So what is the final case he mentioned? So you can see at the top of the screen then, what case does he mention? So you can do, again, it's a personal response, so it's a short no answer, or a sentence if you like. Now, this question, what equipment does he have? So what equipment does he have? And why does he need flour? And if you can see my spelling or my typing error, forgive me. Okay, so what equipment does he have? And why does he need flour? So we're just going to pause and give you time to do those questions. Don't forget, we're on YouTube, so you can go back to any of the slides. You can reflect on your answers. But what I would like is that you've got a complete set of responses, notes, annotations as you've read this text for yourself, just checking in on what is happening. Okay, lovely people. So our final activity for today is just to do a short summary response. So we're going to now think about the whole text. Okay, we're going to look at the whole text and think about summarizing it in terms of how it begins, what it's about, what it develops, and the final idea. Okay, so when I say go, you're going to be using your answers to the questions that you found, thinking about those answers in the order they occur, and it's going to enable you to tell me and complete these sentence stems. So it says here, this article about. Okay, so in a minute, you're going to complete that sentence for yourself, and you might suggest that this is an article about a ghost hunter. But actually it's a little bit more than that, isn't it? Because what's this ghost hunter actually setting out to do? So for that one, you can always look back to the headline. Okay, so what's our ghost hunter setting out to do? It then says it begins with. So again, that's going to take you back to that beginning paragraph, some of the notes we were making at the beginning of this article. So this article about a ghost hunter, but you could do a better answer than that, begins with him answering questions or him talking about a ghostly occurrence that he was able to explain as being linked to, was it cats? No. Dog? No. What animal? So it begins with a ghostly experience. It could be explained with some sort of animal up to mischief. It develops the idea that, so actually our ghost hunter goes on to explain some of the other ways that you can explain inexplicable events, so that you can find logical reasons for why people believe ghostly things have happened. But interestingly, there are certain things that he does believe in. He doesn't say he doesn't believe in ghosts. So it develops the idea that some things can be explained, but others can't maybe. And the final idea we're left with is that. So what's the final image we get of our ghost hunter? So lovely people, that's our work for today. So you're going to just pause and do your summary. You can write that into your book. Okay, and it was lovely working with you today. Come back for your next lesson. Goodbye.